Hello, everybody. Terrence Lakeview here with another episode of the Intellectual Agrarian podcast, where we talk philosophy from the farm. Today, we're talking with Steven Cornett from Nature's Always Right in Lemon Grove, California. Together, we'll be talking about how Steven got started in agriculture, what compost tea is, how he got involved in YouTube, and so much more. You won't want to miss this episode with Steven Cornett. Steven Cornett, welcome to the show.
Hey, Terrence. Good to be talking to you.
Now, my first question is really out of curiosity, but are there actually lemons in Lemon Grove, California?
Yes, there are still a few left. Not the famous orchards that used to be here, but there's many homeowners that have nice citrus trees.
Okay. This is, again, just continuing going down that road a little bit, but so it was actually known for having lemon groves back in the day.
Yeah, it definitely was. And my grandma actually grew up here, so she was able to tell me kind of what it used to look like. You know, there was horses everywhere, dirt roads. You know, it was really more of an agricultural area in like the south and southeast part of the county here in San Diego. But as with everything, it has changed, and now there's the city.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how that happens, because even where I live, kind of in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, when my father moved up here, there was nothing except cornfields. Now they just put a Mills Fleet farm. He's over the moon about that. But there's more and more development where it wasn't. And it's not an area where you'd think, oh yeah, let's develop this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right in the middle of Wisconsin. But I don't know, it's just how things go. You know, you think that things are going to stay the same forever, but that is just not how things work, unfortunately.
No.
Or fortunately.
Yeah, fortunately. The agriculture, I think, is one of those weird things where you really get the opportunity to see that truism shown out in real life.
Interesting.
Because really, even in your urban farm, you get a chance to see the change that happens through domesticating the agriculture, domesticating the nature.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest things about growing plants, is getting to see those changes.
So tell me about your farm. What do you raise? How many acres or square feet in your case? Tell me about
it. So my farm's a little small micro-urban farm, largely based upon Curtis Stone's model. So high profitability, high turnover crops, all veggie crops. So I do lots of salad greens, heads of lettuce, radishes, carrots, beets, various herbs. But something that's kind of more unique about my farm is I mix in a lot of natural systems and permaculture techniques into everything that I do. And I actually make about 90% of my own amendments and nutrients right here on the farm. I have my own compost because I've got about 20 chickens. So that's a big part of it for me as well. But those are some of the crops I'm growing. And so, your typical intensive planted market gardener style.
So you don't have your little mini combine that you use to take up some soybeans that you've grown in the backyard?
No, I don't. Everything's done by hand. I do have a tilther. I have a quick green cut harvester from Farmer's Friend. I love that thing. But that's about it. Those are the only, quote, power tools that I use.
So what made you decide to start an urban farm?
I got started in farming about 8 years ago with my best friend, Jared Smith, who runs Jared's Real Food. And we both had a real big interest in nutrition, and he had started gardening. And his uncle is the owner of an old chicken ranch, and they had some extra land on the old farm. And Jared asked him if he'd let us use that land so we could, experiment and see what we could do. Maybe we could, who knows, maybe we could have a business running our own farm. And we were kind of just crazy young guys, and we went for it and worked really hard and just fell in love with the plants, growing the food, obviously the superior nutrition and food quality. And that was the start for me. And I worked with him for about a year and a half. And then I went and taught English in South Korea for a couple years, traveled for another year after that. I did a permaculture design course, eventually came back to San Diego, started farming with Jared again for about another 6 months. And then I really wanted to have my own place, my own area where I could, innovate, come up with my own ideas, be really creative with a lot of different systems I had in my mind. And I'd also been married quite recently, so me and my wife are looking for a place to live on our own, and kind of get our own business going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I ended up at the property here in Lemon Grove, and that, 2.5, almost 3 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
2 years ago, 2.5 years. I need to look it up, but time flies. So that's how I got started here on this urban plot. And so, part of having the market garden is to provide cash flow for my family so that we can live. And I want to keep getting better and better at growing food. And then the other thing that ties into this for me is my YouTube channel, and trying to teach and get as many people inspired as I can to start urban farming or start some sort of agricultural business, because I want to pass on the love and the passion and the excitement that I have for this. And I know there's a lot of other younger people and people of all ages that want to have their own business. They want to do something that's meaningful, that gives value to their community. And in my opinion, small farming is that. And on top of that, the other reason why I do this and work so hard is because I think that small farming itself has the ability to change more people's lives, to change the culture, to change politics even more than any other actions. Because if we can make people realize that with a well-organized community and people growing their own food, suddenly you realize, hey, I don't have to be so reliant upon these monolith systems that have existed forever, like the banking system, the hugely corrupt corporate and government systems, all of these things. So a lot of that plays into it for me as well, in addition to just loving farming and growing food and everything that comes along with that.
Mm-hmm. Well, something I think that's interesting in that context is that food really is the best decentralized system. Now, of course, there are some people that I do not advocate becoming farmers because it's not easy, as you well know. And so there are some people that give it a little bit of a try, but you don't need to buy several hundred acres in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and try growing your own crops and raising your own livestock. It's a little bit different. What's nice and exciting about what you do is that you've kind of developed your own little urban lab, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
And that's really exciting to see. And your YouTube channel is a great way of kind of publishing your findings, I guess would be the way to put it.
Yeah, I totally think about it that way. And I'm trying to show my agricultural journey. I want to show people where I started, my mistakes, how I learned from them. I love getting feedback from the people who watch my YouTube channel. I've learned an insane amount from them. Hugely thankful for all the people that try to teach me things as well. And I just love the sharing of information that's going on right now on the internet, and then especially in our small farming community.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, do you have, I know like even in my area, nowhere, Wisconsin, between my little zone of maybe within 20 miles, we actually have a nice little pocket of sustainable agriculture people, organic farmers, and even Michael Field's Agricultural Institute is like 20 minutes away. So tell me about your area. Do you have a little niche of organic farmers or sustainable farmers?
Yeah, we definitely do. There's a couple great farms and some farmers that I know, like I mentioned, Jared's Real Food. There's Agua Dulce and Wild Willow. Wild Willow is an awesome farm. They're a nonprofit, and they really focus on education of small farmers, but they're, beyond organic, permaculture, no-till, all that sort of philosophy. And then even in Lemon Grove, it's pretty cool. I met two other farmers. One's literally down the street. The other guy is about a mile away, and they also do organic style of farming. One guy does more hydro growing, but the other guy is more like me, backyard, salad greens, stuff like that. And I'm being contacted all the time by other people, young people usually, who are interested in either starting their own farm or growing their own food, seeing if this might be a career choice for them. So I have seen a huge influx in the amount of people interested in not only farming, but this type of food. And like I said, I started 8 years ago. And so I can really see and feel the difference now.
Yeah, because let's see, 8 years ago was that before or after The Omnivore's Dilemma?
It was after, because
Okay.
I remember reading that book, and Michael Pollan was one of the people who definitely had a big effect on my view of food and stuff. Or like, the documentary Food Inc.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes,
That was
very well.
back then too. Yeah, so that's kind of what all coalesced for me.
That's really neat. So how is it you use permaculture in your farming systems? I know you said you use the kind of similar to the Curtis Stone model. How do you integrate the permaculture and natural systems into that?
So for Curtis's model, what I've incorporated is the 30-inch beds, the very skinny walkway, the less than 60-day maturity crops, the highest profitability crops. Those are some of the main attributes that I have taken from him, and then especially his post-harvest station, all the little efficiencies that he continues to drop on us. And I'm sorry, what was your
Well, how did
question?
you integrate the permaculture systems
right.
into this?
So the first way I did it was I built a chicken coop. That was one of the first, before I even built garden beds, I built a chicken coop, because as I learned from my buddy Jared, the engine of your farm is your compost or your whatever's, creating that organic matter. Maybe you're buying it, but we at his farm made compost from horse and cow manure that we got for free, or we used chicken manure that we got for free. So I knew that going into this, I really wanted to prove that it is possible to create a closed loop system, or a close to a closed loop system, where you can really have a large garden or a small farm and provide most of the nutrients right there. So started with the compost, getting them going. After that, I created a worm bin system. So I have a pretty large vermiculture setup.
And vermiculture, for people that don't know, is raising worms, correct?
Yes. Yep. Raising worms, and specifically so I can get the finished castings. And the finished castings are, in my opinion, the best fertilizer that you could use. It is full of your NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphates. And it also has, humic acids, fulvic acids. It's just incredible stuff. So what I then do is I'll take the worm castings and the compost, I'll blend it together. And then what I do is I make an aerated compost and worm tea. I feed it, additional nutrients to increase the bacterial, or to increase the fungal growth of the tea. And I spray those about every 2 weeks. So that's one way I'm kind of increasing the soil microbiology at my farm.
Now, I don't mean to quite interrupt here, but I do have to kind of interject with a kind of question.
Sure.
So I actually was looking at your YouTube channel the other day, and I saw that you had a video, and I just read the word tea, and I'm a big tea drinker. So immediately I'm like, oh, what's this nutrient-dense tea? Is this some new Earl Grey variety I didn't know about? And so for those that don't really know, what is like the nutrient tea, the compost tea that you use?
Yeah, so compost tea, and we got to be careful with the word tea because it's really used interchangeably. I think what we should be saying is it's an aerated tea. It's an aerobic.
An aerated tea.
Aerated tea that is aerobic, or has lots of oxygen in it.
Okay.
So we want to expand and proliferate the population of aerobic microbes in the soil, because healthy soil is aerobic, not anaerobic.
Now, could you explain for those who don't know the difference? I kind of remember from high school biology, but I think most of us have forgotten. So would you mind explaining to us the difference between the two?
Yeah, definitely. So anaerobic means without or little oxygen. And the microbes that thrive in anaerobic conditions usually are dangerous to humans. So like E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, these are all examples of an anaerobic bacteria. And aerobic bacteria are found in oxygen-loving environments. So in healthy compost, they exist there, in healthy soil. They even exist on the plants themselves, on the leaves, on the root zones. They're everywhere. And so you might have experienced anaerobic soil if you've ever been to a river or a pond or a lake and you've stepped into like the real mucky water and it's all black and it smells kind of like sulfury.
Yeah.
That is kind of like the smell and what happens when soil goes anaerobic. It goes black. And that is not a good sign. That means that any roots that are going down into that anaerobic area are dying. Anaerobic bacteria actually produces alcohols, which destroys the root systems. So anyways, by creating these teas, you're giving your plants a vitamin, micronutrient boost. You're giving them a probiotic. And then you're spreading all this fungal and microbial life to infiltrate the soil. And they go to work converting the sand, silt, and clay into absorbable nutrients that the plants desire.
So it's kind of like if we drink kombucha tea, kind of
Mm-hmm.
similar idea.
Yeah, it's a similar idea, right? You know, if humans didn't have our gut biome, we would die. We couldn't break down food. The whole system doesn't work, and that is the same thing that's going on in our soil. So when we're dumping pesticides, herbicides, and we're tilling the earth, we are removing that biology, eliminating that process. Essentially, if we were to just drop a nuke in our gut digestive or our gut biome and we didn't have it, that would be a direct analogy in my opinion. So, you know, we'd have to hook our bodies up to IV drips to give us all the nutrients. And that's what they're doing in conventional farming. Mm-hmm. They're using, nitrates and all that, these salts essentially. Mm-hmm. And no soil life can really thrive in that. So yeah, the plants grow, sure, because you're giving them like a IV drip of nutrients. But if you understand the system and the soil biology, the plant biology, the way that everything's communicating in concert under the soil, then you realize, wow, how detrimental conventional farming is and how backwards it really is to farm that way.
Well, you know, and that's actually one of the big things that, so I'm actually an organic inspector and I'm involved in the organic industry. When they allowed organic hydroponics, that's kind of where I fell in on that discussion is it's not soil-based.
Yeah.
And so really you're just doing the same thing in conventional farming where you're just giving them the nutrients. It's just the nutrients are organic approved in that case.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, like organic hydro, I could definitely argue that it is superior to conventional in terms of the pesticide residue and I bet you it has more nutrients even.
Oh yeah.
But if you understand plant and soil biology and you realize, hey, we're taking away the communication between the mycorrhizae and the fungi and the microbes and all the different microscopic organisms, there's got to be something missing, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's too complex of a system for us human reductionists to break down into NPK or these 30 micronutrients. And, you know, we've kind of seen a similar shift in human nutrition as well, where they used to say, you only need these ratios of macronutrients. You know, if you have these ratio of carbohydrate, protein, and fat, then you'll be healthy. Well, as we've unlocked a lot more information about nutrition, now we know that's not true. And a lot of the things that they were telling us, like fat is bad, carbohydrates, breads, grains are good for you. We found out through later research and discovery that is not the case. So I think we need to be very careful as humans not to think that we are God and think that we understand this whole system. Just because we understand these little pieces of it doesn't mean we understand the system as a whole. So that's kind of the perspective I'm trying to introduce to people when they consider farming or consider growing food and look at the planet, I guess, and humans. We're this whole system. It shouldn't be separated into pieces.
You know, and I love that you're using this analogy, especially with production, because one of my favorite authors, Nassim Taleb, he talks about narrativity or the narrative fallacy, where basically to create a story, an explanation that makes sense, we remove the beginning, the end, and we only take what information confirms our story or confirms what we think. And that's
Right.
what we do so often with biology. We look at this system and we're like, we pluck this, this, and this, and we try to use it as a math formula instead of as actual biology, as a
But there's like
system.
totally, and there's like a million other variables that we are not seeing that are interacting with our system, and we only have a couple variables. So it's pretty funny thinking when I hear some of these scientists or the conventional farmers talk as if they understand what's going on, but we can't know everything that's going on in nature. And that's kind of why my company's called Nature's Always Right. So the default should always be, let's look to nature. Nature is a perfect system. So what is nature doing? How is it utilizing all these things in a whole system? And how can we mimic that or how can we mimic those systems for our human needs and work in coordination with nature rather than trying to dominate and manipulate it?
Mm-hmm. So you are, and let's go back to using your farm as a laboratory. It's unlike most laboratories because it's not cold and sterile. It's vibrant and full of life. And you get the opportunity to see how life interacts with the life. It's almost more like a preserve almost.
Yeah. I constantly see it. I mean, it blows my mind all the time. I'm always observing new interactions between the different ecosystems. Like when I did my cover crop initially, I remember walking through it and there would just be hundreds of bugs just flying up away from me and all different species. When all throughout the year, I've got different small birds and finches, and they'll come through and they'll actually eat worms off of my plants, even my seedlings. I've seen it. I've got video of them doing it. Even the neighborhood cats play a role. We're in an urban environment here. Well, a lot of people ask me, how do you deal with rodents or rats or things like that? And I'm like, well, I'm really lucky because I've got like 10 different neighborhood cats that roam through my yard. So I never see any rodents. So, and then, going down even further, now when I look at my soil, my beds are a little over a year in production. They've had about 5 different crop rotations through them. And judging my soil from when I started, it was really pretty clay panny. I could get the broad fork in like half of the way. Mm-hmm. Now I can get my broad fork all the way to the end of the tines. It's super smooth. Like the soil aggregates are super crumbly and nice. I just did a soil test, mm-hmm. and I have like all the nutrient levels were excellent, and I've got like 5% organic matter. So pretty good. I'm getting there.
You're getting there.
I'm getting there. Yeah. So I'm excited to do the test again next year and see how it improves. So yeah, little by little. And I just, I see all these interactions, the bugs, the worms, and I love seeing the system get better and better.
As you use YouTube and as you show your results of your work, what's the feedback you usually get? You said you learn a lot more from other people. You get the opportunity to teach other people. Is there one video that you've produced that you're like, that has gotten the most attention or feedback on? What's the thing that people responded to the most, I guess would be the question.
I think my videos on soil creation, compost making, like how to do cover crops and prepare garden beds, kind of how to create natural fertility. Actually, those have been some of my more popular videos now that I think about it.
Well, you see, that's the interesting thing that you have the opportunity to see is it's kind of like getting the pulse on what people are looking for.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And, I think a lot of people are drawn to me because they see somebody who, wow, how's this guy doing this in his backyard? And I think that kind of baffles people sometimes too.
Well, and really it is, we don't think about, but that was the normative back in the day. Yeah, I mean, think of the victory gardens. I mean, even absolutely. Back as far as my great-grandmother, mm-hmm. that wasn't abnormal, but we've become so, I don't want to use the word sterile, but really we've become so disconnected. We've packaged everything. We've tried to make our lives more convenient at the cost of our nutrition and really knowing how our food is grown. We didn't want to know how the sausage was made, so we decided to ignore how vegetables are raised.
Right. Hey, it's got the organic label on it. I'm safe. I don't have to think any further than that.
And as an organic inspector, I still critique people on that. And actually, I'm taking next week, this Monday, I'm going to be going to take organic processing course. So it'll actually be going into all the things that make the prepackaged thing you see on the shelf that says organic. And it's funny because my main critique for people, and people have listened to the show, they've heard me say it a couple of times, organic goldfish. They want to get goldfish, but they want the organic label on it because it makes them feel that much better. Well, guess what? Still eat a bloody tomato.
Yeah, right. That's hilarious. Wow.
So how do you market your farm? Where do people go to meet you and enjoy your food?
So locally, the farmers market. So the La Mesa Farmers Market is my main market right now. I've done some different ones throughout San Diego. And that's really how most people have been able to find me and buy my food. You know, a few people have reached out to me and found me through like Instagram and Facebook locally. But most of it has been through like word of mouth and just going to the markets and slowly building a clientele that way.
Is there a particular farmer's market you enjoy more than the others?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The La Mesa Farmers Market is the one I started buying at like maybe 10 years ago, something like that. When I first started really getting into nutrition and health and realized the difference in food quality between the grocery store and the farmers market. So it was pretty fun because it was really full circle because me and Jared, my friend I started farming with, we'd go to that market every week and talk to farmers and pick their brains and ask them questions and how did you guys do this and what do you do about gophers and all that sort of thing. So it's really special for me to now be selling at that market, you know, all these years later, and it's pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. I
love that one.
I used to do farmers markets, so I totally understand. There was one that I used to visit that then I got to work at, and it was such a blast. And you can give me your opinion on this, but I always think the farmers market would be a great, like, The Office style comedy.
Dude, yeah, I totally agree. It's an interesting workplace. Like the other sellers there are kind of like your coworkers in a way, but it's a little different feeling. Yeah, you know, the customer conversations would totally be interesting. I agree.
And then you always have those people that travel in and out of the farmers market, and you're like, oh, dude, where were you for 6 months?
Yeah. And they just pretend like they've only missed a couple weeks, but like,
I was here last week.
Yeah.
When did you grow that beard?
Yeah. Yeah, I love my customers.
So when you go to the farmer's market, do you have a set amount of product that you usually bring? I mean, obviously it just seasonally, but how does it usually work for you?
So I've got a little Excel sheet that I made where I just track my sales every week. So it helps me track my profits and all that. But I also use it to see how much I've been able to sell over history. Mm-hmm. So after about a year of selling at this market, I really know kind of the range that I'm going to sell. You know, at the market, all the vendors are always talking like, oh, why is it so busy today? Or, oh, where's everybody? But it's kind of like nature, like the market is a natural system itself. It is nature. And so there's too many variables to try to predict. Right. Mm-hmm. And, this is why regulations and subsidies are a bad idea too. But yes. we don't have to go down that road.
We don't have to go down that road.
But, so yeah, that's, I guess that's what I got going on at the market.
And that's how you are also able to figure out which products people really aren't interested in or they want more than others?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you're thinking about doing small farming or just about to get started, I really can't recommend selling at a market enough, you know, even if it's just for a year, because the amount of practice that you'll get communicating, selling to your customer, you'll get customer feedback, you'll get recommendations. You can ask your customers direct questions. Hey, how did you like the salad mix last week? Was there too much arugula? Did the leaves start to wilt after a week? You know, what's going on? And for me, it's just been insanely valuable, and I've just learned a ton. I'm just way better at sales and talking to people and And like you said, I really know what my customers want and what they value. And like this year, I'm growing bok choy. I'm growing some more collard greens, some things that people have been requesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, definitely recommend the farmer's market. It is a lot of work. It's like a 14-hour day. But, if you can stick it out, it's a great way to develop all these skills, like I said, and also develop a customer base. Mm-hmm. These are people you can add to your mailing list, that you could possibly do a CSA or box in the future with them. So it is worth it in my mind to kind of stick it out until you've developed more of a customer base. And then kind of what my next step is sort of branch out and start generating more private sales, like on farm or through a CSA box, something like that. More restaurants. Mm-hmm. But I love the idea of getting your feet wet at a farmer's market.
Well, I mean, we kind of talked about the way that the soil is the stomach microbes. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the way that customers and your marketing channels are for the farm as a business. It's the medium by which you get the cash flow that you need to continue farming, but it's also how you get the knowledge for what people want.
Totally. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, with the CSA box, it's a little more difficult. You don't have as much time or with the customer, or maybe you're not even seeing them because they're picking it up at a fridge.
Mm-hmm. Which, just a note, Chris Blanchard, may he rest in peace, I remember him talking about at one conference that he actually found that the more people he had between him and the people and the box, mm-hmm. the more his sales kind of declined, and people would get a little bit more agitated just because they were buying from the farmer. They want to have a relationship with the farmer, but they never saw the farmer. So, I mean, really, that relationship cannot be emphasized enough in its importance. It is the competitive marketing tool that farmers really get by comparison to all these farms, these stores that now say, oh, local produce. We've got certified organic local bok choy from California, which in your neck of the woods, if it's from California, isn't bad. But when you're getting California produce in Wisconsin and they're calling it local,
it's crazy. Yeah.
We have a disconnect there.
A little bit.
So I'm curious, with your marketing, are you concerned at all, since you're located in an urban environment, whereas a lot of farmers, like, as I said, my direction, our farthest city is 2 hours away. I mean, our closest big city is 2 hours away. So Amazon's fresh market delivery service won't affect us anytime soon. Is that something that you're a little concerned about going forward in the future, or have you thought about it very much?
This is something I have thought about, actually. I believe, so what we're witnessing right now in the change of consumption and consumers right now, everyone's shifting to maximum convenience, maximum time saving. I feel like people maybe are starting to value that more than even cost now. Mm-hmm. Whereas Americans, I think, used to value cost. That was their highest priority. Mm-hmm. So I think what we need to do as small farmers is get ahead of the game. And what we need to do is mimic what Amazon and these other companies are going to do, which is to have either home delivery or these locker setups. Mm-hmm. So basically, it would be just like the Amazon locker system. But they'd order online. The farmer would harvest, bag the order, take it to a central location where it's stored in a locker. The customer comes, they input a code, they take out their personal bag and go home. This is what we're witnessing happening with a lot of consumer goods and now food. And so, this is what I think we should do. Another idea I've had is even just why isn't there a grocery store that in the city, like we're in San Diego, this is a huge city. We have enough local farms that we could stock a grocery store with only local produce. Why doesn't that exist? But, these are very hard businesses to run. Mm-hmm. And operate. They're very high expense, unfortunately, because of all the regulations and cost of health and food safety and all this. It prevents us from doing some of these more innovative and necessary ideas. So those are some of the things in our way, and that's kind of why I want to play with more private markets, privatized way of doing things, so that we don't have to deal with as much of the legal mumbo jumbo that just totally gets in our way and totally takes our money from us. So that's kind of the vision I see of the future, and I definitely want to push that forward, because we will get run out of business if we do not adapt. The farmers markets may go away someday in the next 10 years. It's possible. Yeah. There also may be a nostalgia thing, and people will continue to go. We're going to have to see how the market unfolds, but we need to be ready and prepared to move our businesses either way.
Hey, see, I love hearing you say that. I actually had a falling out with a local farmer, I don't know, earlier this last year, because I advocated that we have to figure out how to adapt to the way the modern customer base is going to be. And he was just hardened to the fact that if we do anything that even resembles how Amazon or any of these big companies do it, then we're sacrificing our morals, et cetera, et cetera. And while I agree with him in some of it, where we shouldn't be sending produce halfway across the country or things like that, we do have to adapt. I mean, that's the way nature works itself. Again, nature is always right. Nature adapts to survive. Right. And that means sometimes our marketing methods should adapt to survive, because people's tastes and needs change. And if you're really trying to serve your customers, which is what every good business should do, you're going to be doing your best to fill those customers' needs, and the needs slightly change. I mean, the great need will always be food. They need to eat. But how you serve them best is what determines if they're going to buy from you or buy from someone that actually meets the need that they really have besides just food.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And, if people are buying food from small farmers and they want this high quality food, they're going to seek out local sources. And hopefully in the future, in the next 10 years, we're going to generate enough small, mid, and large size farms that are doing it sustainably and even better than, let's just say, the USDA organic standards are now. It'll be decentralized enough that we can compete with Amazon ethically and just have it be a more localized version. I mean, my dream really is to have, in these big cities, there should be like food hub setups. There should be these businesses kind of being aggregators for all the small farmers and distributing the food in a super hyper local way. I just haven't seen. I've seen some models of things works. What's his name? I'm blanking on his name. Michael Shepard, and I think he's in Wisconsin. Organic Valley.
Organic Valley is one of the big co-ops. Yes.
Yeah, like they all join together and they sell their products together under one label. So like ideas like that are very interesting to me, where there's ways that we as, me as a small little backyard grower, I can't grow fruit. But if I can generate enough farmers around, or I can meet enough farmers around me that maybe they grow fruit, well, maybe we can team up and we can, we'll put my heads of lettuce and salad mix with your fruit and some other person's microgreens. And now we got a CSA box. So working together in like a co-op sort of situation, I think is another great way as small growers that we can grow our business and get into other markets, get into other, kind of test out different products as well.
Now, this is a little bit of a delineation here, but, well, delineation is the wrong word. Digression. That's what I meant, digression. But have you heard of the food co-op, the People's Food Co-op in Viroqua, Wisconsin?
I haven't.
I do recommend looking it up. It's really neat. It's one of those examples of, in fact, there was an article that I can't remember who published it, but it was in Aspen Institute's 5 Best Ideas of the Day, which was that local food is reinvigorating some of these small communities. And they used Viroqua, Wisconsin, and Harlan, Iowa, 2 places I've had the opportunity of visiting, as examples of how local food has reinvigorated and brought vitality to these tiny little nowhere cities and towns. Really cool. And I think that's the model we need to look for.
Yeah, I agree, man. I'm definitely going to go check that out. Now, decentralization. Like this is kind of like the theme that we keep talking about.
I love how interviews like this, we come across the same things. We were talking about how nature's always right, how We need to have the decentralized system, the microbes, the medium to really process. I think it's great how things work in circles. That's what nature does. It works in circles.
Yeah.
Now, before we go, I want to ask you one final question. I saw a recent video you were doing on passion fruit and dragon fruit. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me about the experiment and what those fruits are, because I'm a near Billy in Wisconsin and we don't have that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so this is one of the awesome things about growing in San Diego. Besides being able to grow year round, we can grow tropical and subtropical fruit here. And I'm in the California Rare Fruit Growers Club. So I've been able to be exposed to like grafting techniques and some of the really cool stuff people are doing here. You know, people have mango trees, papayas, bananas, and then of course, dragon fruit and passion fruit. And so I'm using the passion fruit to cover all of my fence lines surrounding my property. And then I'm also putting it on my chicken coop to provide natural shade. It's beautiful. And it provides natural shade for the chickens in summer while also giving me food. And the dragon fruits are really pretty. They're basically a type of cactus. And they just have this magnificent colored, it's usually pink or white or yellow fruit, and very nutritious. And I'm just training those in kind of the more vertical spaces in my yard that I can take advantage of.
Steven, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a wonderful conversation. Where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
People should definitely check out my YouTube channel, Nature's Always Right. I'm also super active on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want any other information or want to contact me, go to my website, naturesalwaysright.com, for more information.
Thanks again, Steven, for being on the show.
Thanks, Terrence. Talk to you soon.
Big thanks to Steven for being on the show today. You can learn more about his farm by visiting his YouTube channel and by visiting his website, naturesalwaysright.com. Links to both can be found in the show notes. Thanks again for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast in whatever your podcast player of choice is. While you're there, if you would be so kind as to leave us a rating and review, we would deeply appreciate it. Once again, thank you for listening. This has been Terrence Lehue and the Intellectual Agrarian Podcast, reminding you to keep farming the dream.